All right. Get that situated over here. Welcome back to the channel, guys. In today's video, we'll be talking about composition. This is actually going to be a crash course in composition, which in my opinion is more important than your gear. I mean, you could have the best gear money can buy, but if you know nothing about composition, your photos will pretty much look like shit. So, hello and welcome back. If this is your first time on the channel, my name is Paco. I'm a photographer in Manila, and on this channel we talk about photography, obviously. In this video we're talking about composition, and this is actually going to be a crash course in composition. The question is, what is composition? Composition, simply put, is how you arrange what you see when you frame your shot, which ends up being your final photo. So how does one improve in composition? Now, the beauty about photography is that it's been around for hundreds of years, and the masters of yesteryears pretty much have figured out a lot of these things for us. So these tips aren't my original tips. These are things that I've picked up and learned, that I've been advised and told, and so on and so forth. And I credit the people I've learned this from, like Steve McCurry, Sean Tucker, Ria Torrente, my mentor, Ria. She's taught me a lot. So these are things I've learned from them. And these sources, these people where I've learned this from, they're not the originator of they're not the originator of these tips. Many of the tips I'll share here predate them, but it's where I heard it from. They're the people I've heard it from, and check them out. I just want to give credit where it's due, where I've learned it from. And yeah, so the tips I'm sharing here with you, they may have other uses or maybe defined differently by others. This is just how I have understood it and how I've used it in the past. So, if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, toss it out the window. Whichever works for you. That's the most important thing. So, we will be starting off with the most famous rule of thirds. Now, the rule of thirds is if you divide your screen into 3 equal parts horizontally and vertically, you come up with this grid. And my understanding here, when they say rule of thirds, the word rule doesn't necessarily mean a rule for you not to break, but my personal understanding is it rule as in measurement. The grid is a very excellent guide in helping you create or compose your photos. Another tip, by the way, the grid can help you in centering your subject and giving you a good idea of the horizon. You can line up the horizon there. You can frame elements into the vertical or horizontal lines. And when taking landscapes, ideally, when taking landscapes, you want your horizon to be on the lower line. That allows you to have the horizon on the lower line, and then you've got your ground elements and whatever sky objects, elements you have in the sky, the clouds, the sun, and if you got buildings, mountains, valleys, and trees, you've got that all there. But that's that general idea. So, taking a look at some examples here. This nice shot here that I've taken the park. As you can see, we've got the grid popping up here, and we have the person in the grass sitting down, and he's just right there, perfectly where the lines intersect. So this is a classic example of using the rule of thirds. Also, if you notice, the tree back there lines up and this tree over here lines up. That's just coincidental. Now, the second tip is symmetry and balance. Now, symmetry and balance can be achieved in several ways. Keeping your subject at the center can help you in achieving some form of symmetry or balance. You can also look for columns or posts or anything that create a sense of balance and help you frame the shot. So Still using the rule of thirds, if you look at this example, you can see here how we've got the person on the motorcycle in a nice pink outfit there. He's right dead center, but we get a sense of symmetry and balance because we've got this plant, this tree here on the left, and this other tree here on the right. And with the subject right dead in the center and the tree on the left and the right, it creates a sense of symmetry, a sense of balance. And again, so looking at the rule of thirds, we see that lower horizon, that lower horizontal line lining up almost perfectly with the sidewalk there. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Again, rule of thirds is a very handy tool, that grid. Jumping off to tip number 3, framing. So with framing, it's creating a frame. So when you take a picture, you're framing up your shot, but you want to create a frame within that frame. So what do I mean by that? You can use things like windows, doors, archways, trees, and almost anything you can find in your surroundings. And I've got a nice example over here. In this shot, if you can take a look, we've got this guy on a bicycle, and as he was passing by, you can see that this window frames the person. So this is a nice example of framing. But what's even a lot more awesome is that we have this smaller frame within that frame, which isolates him perfectly over there. But also, if you look over here, we've got these 4 other frames. So we're now combining, again, multiple composition techniques, composition tips. So you've got that large frame, and then we got this frame, smaller frames within a frame, and there's several of them, or 4 of them here. And that creates repetition. We're breaking that with this person over here. So, yeah. Repetition. That's actually the next tip, repetition. Repetition is how patterns can help you create symmetry. So going back to our second tip about symmetry and balance. So there, repetition. You want to look out for patterns that repeat around you, and you want to use it to either break the pattern or work with the pattern. As I was showing you with that bicycle shot, that person breaks the pattern of the 4 repeating frames. Or going back to the motorcycle shot, where you've got these trees lined up, and you see these trees on the sidewalk, and that's one tree after another, and we break that repetition here with the guy in the motorcycle. So it's tree, guy in the motorcycle, tree. And again, we're just using the rule of thirds as a guide. Now, one tip I have here, which is a bit tricky, is leading lines. Leading lines is basically you're using lines that form in your composition, in your photo, and you're using these lines to lead to your subject. And a good example I have here is I've got this nice photo here of Zhang, and she's pretty much framed in the center over here, but we've got these structures on the sidewalk that form leading lines straight towards her. So it draws our eyes to her, and combining these tips, we come here and we have this nice frame formed by the buildings, and they frame her up in the shot over here. So that's real awesome. That's cool. Tip number 6, contrast. Now I say contrast, but the proper term is figure to ground, and it's basically about creating contrast. So you want to create contrast between your subject and the background, and you can create contrast with a number of different things. A good example would be color and light, but you can also use texture and other things. A good example I have here is this photo. So we've got this photo of a lady and an umbrella, and she stands out because there is a bit of contrast. She's wearing black and her umbrella is black. and we have all this light coming through. So that's one way of creating contrast. Another way of creating contrast would be, again, still with light, but this time, if you take a look at this shot, we've got Christine here, by the way, if you've seen my last video. The light is hitting her face on the left side of her screen here, but behind her, it's dark. And she stands out, and then as the light fades away, you can see she starts to dip into the shadow here on the right side. She starts to go into the shadow, but the light in the background, as you can see in the back, it's now starting to lighten up. So this is a good example of creating contrast with the lighting and using dramatic lighting. Now, the last tip we've got is to fill the frame. And filling the frame, basically, when you take a photo, sometimes we use negative space and white space, and that's awesome. But there are times that you just have to go up close and fill the frame with your subject. And product photography is a good way, is a good example in showing that. Yeah. So product photography is a good example there. So if you take a look at this shot here with these cards, if I were standing back a foot away, this shot wouldn't look as nice. I mean, when you're up close and you've got the deck of cards there, and you've got all the cards laying around here on the side, that just looks awesome. It wouldn't look the same and wouldn't feel the same if you were back a few feet or a foot or two. And going back to this shot here with the rule of thirds again, this bottle is very small, really. And if you look at the cards and in comparison to the bottle, you can see how the bottle is small in contrast to the size of the cards. And if I were taking this shot further back, it just, again, wouldn't give you this feeling, it wouldn't look as nice, basically. You'd have all this negative space and an empty table. It just looks weird. But yeah, that's tip number 7, filling the frame. So there you go, 7 tips in composition. Again, this is really a crash course in composition. These are the 7 things I try to do. I don't always get to do it. Sometimes it's an afterthought, but you want to be more conscious when you frame your shot and look at not just your subject, but the elements and the environment when you're framing your shot. So, yeah, if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really hope you liked the tips I've shared with you. If there's any other tips you want to share, drop them down in the comments below. But yeah, if you like this sort of stuff, do consider leaving a like, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell so that in the next time, if we come up with another video, you get notified, you can check it out. And I'll see you in the next video. Keep safe.